Alright guys, I wanted to talk to you about the biggest loser of UFC 292. The aftermath is still happening, and to me, that is Ian Garry. The way that he was talking before UFC 292, his treatment of Neil Magny, his inability to finish a one-legged fighter, him calling it a masterclass and all that sort of stuff. Fighters are turning him down left and right. Let's get into it right now, guys. So firstly, are you guys enjoying the Ian Garry show post UFC 292? Because it seems like it is a cringe fest. To me, it looks like a slow-moving car crash. It looks like Disney's recent box office sales. It looks like The Witcher after Henry Cavill left. It looks horrific. Guys, let's start from the top, right? Going into UFC 292, Ian Garry was making outrageous claims that he was the one that was selling the pay-per-view. Like, for some reason, Sean O'Malley doesn't exist. For some reason, Aljamain Sterling, like the fans wanting to see him get beaten up, doesn't exist. Like, to Ian Garry, it was the Ian Garry show. No one loves talking about Ian Garry more than Ian Garry loves talking about Ian Garry. It was weird. And just recently, leading into 292, there was also this very strange interaction that he had with Jamal Hill. He met Jamal Hill in the streets, and all he could talk to Jamal about was how Ian Garry dreamed of being a black man and how he literally sleeps at night wishing that he was black. And Jamal Hill was just like, what are you talking about, mate? Like, this is such an odd thing to bring up to another human being. Like, you're both fighters, you're both talented. Jamal Hill was a champion, and the one thing that you want to talk to him about is how you dream of being black. Like, it's so like, again, you're just talking about yourself. Like, you're just bringing yourself into this. Plus, like, you could tell that Jamal was very uncomfortable with the whole conversation. It's such a cringy conversation to have. So Ian was already giving off a lot of cringe vibes going into this. And you know what we've seen of Ian Garry going into this was just a very cocky Irishman with that sort of Conor McGregor swagger, which is easy to have because maybe just all the Irish act that way. But then we get into the actual press conference leading into 292. And Neil Magny makes a very off-the-cuff comment about how he's a father and he's used to putting a whooping on young kids. Like, it was clearly just something that was said as a turn of phrase. Like, nobody thinks that Neil Magny is going around beating the shit out of his children every chance that he gets. I don't even know if you're allowed to say that on YouTube, but no one thinks that that is what Neil Magny is doing. Like, anytime his kids get out of line, or he just comes home from training and just wants to put a whooping on his kids, like, it was just more of like a tongue-in-cheek, like, you're a young lad up and coming, I'm used to disciplining young people. Like, it was like, Ian Garry obviously took that way too far out of context. Way too far out of context. And what's even stranger is when you go to the comment sections, or if you guys remember going to the comment sections, reading about this, is people were having like a very serious discussion about how you should raise your children, when it's just not necessary, because that's not really what Neil Magny was doing. Like, I think the conversation that should have been happening, and what a lot of people were pointing out, was like, Ian Garry is being really mean and just putting it on Neil Magny too much for something that he was not really saying. He was more saying it in like a tongue-in-cheek, like, this is just a line that I'm throwing out there. And Ian Garry just took it so literally, which was, again, just completely cringe to watch. Then we get into his actual performance at UFC 292. And yeah, he beat up Neil Magny. He put it on him. But Neil Magny was down to one leg for most of that fight, and Ian Garry couldn't finish him. He couldn't finish a one-legged fighter. Now, if we are going to be giving shit to Bilal Muhammad for not being able to finish a one-armed Gilbert Burns, guys, we have to keep that same energy when it comes to Ian Garry not being able to finish a one-legged Neil Magny. I mean, number one, if you are this striking prodigy that thinks you're the greatest striker in the weight class, maybe even the UFC, you're comparing yourself to Wonder Boy, which we will get into. But if you're out there comparing yourself to Wonder Boy, saying that you're putting on a masterclass, what you're doing in there is art, bro, you can't finish a one-legged Neil Magny. You can't finish Neil Magny. You can't finish a one-legged Neil Magny. So you're going to drag us through this beat up of a one-legged old man that you couldn't finish and then come up to us and say that it was just chef's kiss martial arts. Is there brain damage here? Have you already got CTE? You're a young man. You shouldn't already have CTE, but you're acting like you already have CTE. And of course, then we've got to talk about the post-fight press conference where he was sort of asking everyone in the press room that, obviously you agree with me in the way that I was treating Neil Magny because he is such a piece of shit human being. And the press conference room was just like a little bit quiet. Like everyone sort of felt the awkwardness of that. Like no one really wanted to get into it with him in a back and forth of, he wasn't speaking literally, yeah, mate. Like, this wasn't a literal thing that he was saying. And again, just the vibe of the press conference room was very quiet and very awkward as Neil Magny was talking, as Ian Garry was talking about just how brilliantly he had done and how everyone in that room absolutely agrees with him. And go back and read the comment sections of that post-fight press conference. There are a lot of people that don't agree with him, and there are a lot of people that think he is becoming a cringe king, and he thinks that everything that is happening to him is just the grace of God, and this is all part of a glorious plan that is happening. And I don't think that the world is heading in the direction that you think it's heading in, Ian Garry. In fact, I think your career trajectory right now is going from fan favorite to cringe lord. Now, there are going to be people that are still on the Ian Garry train. There are always people like this. There are people like this, and you know what example I'm going to bring up? Israel Adesanya. Israel Adesanya has been a cringe lord for the last 2-3 years. The more that we've gotten to know Izzy, the more cringy and unlikable he has become. But he has always had people that back him up and are just Israel Adesanya riders, no matter what. Except for when he lost to Pereira. And then when he lost to Pereira, a lot more people were happy to talk shit about Israel Adesanya. Paddy Pimblett. Paddy Pimblett was the UFC's golden boy, absolute fan favorite, all the way up leading into that fight, even when Ariel Helwani showed him the receipts and showed that Paddy Pimblett was lying, until Paddy Pimblett lost that fight. And now Paddy Pimblett is an extremely unliked fighter. A lot of people that are MMA fans are just fans of whoever is winning. And Ian Garry still has that effect today. They are just fans of him because he is winning. But once he gets exposed, and I think that if you can't finish a one-legged Neil Magny, you are bound to get exposed soon as well. Then we will see. Then we will see all these people who have been saying it from the beginning, Neil Magny was never that good, da-da-da-da-da. Then they'll come out of the woodwork. But unfortunately for now, while you're still winning, it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter how you act. If you're winning, and some fans are just going to get behind you no matter what. But the thing that has been happening lately, as of this week, that wanted me to make this video, that prompted me to make this video, is that fighters are now starting to turn him down left and right. He's pushing hard for the Wonderboy fight, and Wonderboy has said, no, I am no longer a gatekeeper. I'm 40-something years old. I'm not sure of Wonderboy's exact age, but he's around 40-something years old. And we all know Wonderboy has got one run left at that title, and Wonderboy is dead serious about it. And Wonderboy wants a full training camp. He's not going to fight him on short notice, and he doesn't even want to fight backwards. Wonderboy wants to fight up the rankings, which, I'm a huge Wonderboy fan, so I love that Wonderboy is taking his career this seriously in his twilight run. I think that's great, and I think that's the right thing for Wonderboy to say. The really surprising one was Kevin Holland says he's not interested in fighting Ian Garry. And Kevin Holland is interested in fighting anyone. Kevin Holland is there to make money, to rock up every 3 months and have a big fight. That's what Kevin Holland loves. And even Kevin Holland isn't interested in it, because Ian Garry he's a bit of a hype train, it looks like. He might be just a bit of a hype train, loudmouth, annoying kid. And the people up the rankings don't want to bother with that. So what do you guys think should be next for Ian Garry? Do you think I am being too harsh on him? Personally, I think that since we got the Neil Magny fight, we might as well just rebook the Jeff Neal fight. We learnt literally nothing new about Ian Garry, except that he needs another run in front of the fans and a good manager to try and salvage his career. That's really all we learned, is that if you let this kid talk by himself on the microphone, he will bomb his own career. So let's just rebook the original fight that we were going to have and have at it. Or should MVP sign to the UFC as a free agent and we put him in there with Neil Magny and watch the hype train get derailed by someone that isn't even in the UFC? I don't know, guys. I don't know what the answer is. All I know is that I log back into MMA news this week and all I'm seeing is more people just tearing Ian Garry apart. Every time I see this kid talk in an interview, it becomes worse and worse to watch. I become less and less of a fan. If this was UFC 4 and it was the little popularity counter, I'd be putting him at like -100 popularity right now. If this guy is going to be a superstar that wants to sell pay-per-views, we need to turn it around right now. That is just my opinion. Guys, let me know your opinion down in the comments. Do you think Neil Magny's on the right track? Do you think he's the next Conor McGregor? Or do you think he might be the next Jake Paul, Paddy Pimblett? Like, you're going to sell pay-per-views, but you're going to sell pay-per-views because we want to see you get knocked the fuck out. Let me know down in the comments. If you guys have been enjoying these videos, consider clicking subscribe. We're going to be making a lot more of them. This is the last video coming to you from the US, and I'm back in my routine in Australia next week. And I will see you all in the next one.